Well, hello everyone. It's Curt from Smirk and Dagger Games, and I'm here with another edition of Smirky Inside. I am trying to make this a weekly thing, and eventually I will invest in a better studio rather than doing it here in my kitchen. But in any case, um, just wanted to share with you, some updates on some of the games that we have, done some sneak peeks on, including this this one. Which is hex decks. Um, so one of the interesting things about game design is that sometimes you realize that you are too close to a design to really be objective in its evaluation. This is a great case of where the whole design team got caught up by that. As you may know, we're working on a deck builder version of our original game, Hex. And what's interesting is that so much of us have so much heart and love for this game and some of the cards that are actually in it that we're excited when they pop up and we want to buy them in this deck builder to put in our decks. And originally, we wanted to buy those cards because we loved the cards, not because they were necessarily good strategic decisions. So by playtesting with people who were not as enamored with some of these cards, we found out, oh, hey, there's no actual logical reason. You put yourself at a disadvantage by buying some of these cards. So, I mean, for example, I'll just got one here. Here are two great cards that we love to play. Both add either chaos or a lot of damage to the game. So Boost adds +1 damage to the hex, and it allows you to pass the hex because it's a game of curse and counter curse. But a lot of these cards can come back and bite you in the butt. So why would I sacrifice a card to put this into my hand and potentially have to eat it later on? Especially with something like Rot, where every time you're past the hex, you're losing a point of victory, willpower. So we ended up taking a hard look after getting some playtester feedback and deciding that some of the cards probably need to be worth victory points at the end of the game. So here, the cards that you are going to be, I don't know, enticed to buy because they are worth points at the end of the game are also those cards that are most likely going to doom you by playing them, which I think is a really interesting tension in a deck builder. So anyway, so just want to give you a little heads up on that, but actually I'm here because I want to talk about the spill some more. Last week we saw, first of all, Andy Kim's amazing four-way dice tower, which he folded out of cardboard, and it's quite an engineering marvel. But as you can see up closer now, it's taken a beating, and that's what we don't want to have happen when you get the game home, to have something like that. So we're looking at ways to re-engineer this piece, either making these pieces themselves acrylic, which might actually, just help the structural rigidity as well as keep all those tabs intact without getting a lot of wear and tear. But we also came up with another idea, which is to actually make modular plastic molds. So here you can see on the table, I've got our prototype just 3D printed for what that tower could be. And essentially it's two stacked funnels on top of a rounded cone, which will spill the dice out onto the board. And this is important because, as I mentioned last time, this is a co-op game where you are racing against the clock, trying to prevent disaster, because this is an oil rig. And the oil rig has spouted a leak. It is pouring crude oil into the ocean and threatening the sea life. In fact, at the beginning of the game, you're going to start with 8 dice that go into that tower that starts the emergency. Now, last time people were like, cool, what? You didn't show us how cool it was going down the new dice tower. So I will actually do that right now. So let's put some dice over here. That's cool. They actually went in all 4 different quadrants. There we go. And of course, now that they've gone into different quadrants, you're actually going to then take them out. They each go into a particular quadrant that they spilled into, and the face value determines what sector in that quadrant they fall into. So here is a 1. That's going to go there. 3. Another 1. Ooh. And another 1. All right, well, on a first spill, if it hits a piece of sea life, one of the marine animals, you have to redrop it. There we go. 3 over here. Now, what you can see is they quickly start stacking, and there's only 3 slots that you can accept dice into. And this whole tower's purpose is to pour dice down across the board in a random pattern as the oil bleeds out into the ocean. And if you ever, on later turns, let's say we did roll another 1, that actually is going to get this octopus contaminated. And then they'll flip over to the oil-stained side, which is definitely a threat to this animal. So what you'll have to do then is spend extra action points, not just to get there, not just to remove the oil to get to the animal, but then it'll be an extra action point to clean that animal as well and rescue it, putting it over on your rescue board. Now over here, just pivot a little bit, you can see that we do have our rescue board, and it's got slots for all the creatures that are in the game. There are 6 different types and 6 different animals for each of those types. You lose, by the way, if you lose 3 of one type of marine animal or 1 full set of all the marine animals. That is a way to lose the game. The other way is if you end up with this, by the way, when you do get a full column of dice like this, that is called a spill out. It can't accept any more oil. That is a saturated area, and if it got more, it's going to now roll into another area. So it keeps on spreading and pooling and growing. You can only have 6 rows of dice, 6 spillouts at a given time on the board before you lose. That's another losing condition. Well, so that gives you a little bit of a sense for the game. This has been actually a pretty long design process, and Andy and I, the designer, are going to be getting together right after this broadcast and taking a look at some of the suggested changes that we've had, tweaks mostly, trying to really nail the balance. And in a cooperative game, the balance is what you really need to make this a compelling game. We thought, quite honestly, at the outset, that this was going to be a purely mathematical problem and fairly easy to solve. There are, of course, 24 circuits around the table, different sectors. There's a known number of dice, 60, and a known number of sea animals. So, knowing how many drop per turn, you get like a mathematical equation that you can use to base some of the odds on what things are going to happen and where the trigger points are. But as we brought in people who are really good at math, we realized that there are a lot of other things at play, some of which are the resource cards that you get. Resource cards can give you an edge. but some also have a risk and reward. So for example, here, the containment boom, get a little bit closer on that, that allows you to push back all of the oil dice from a particular sector that your ship is in. And it just pushes it right back into the bag, and you can deal with it again later, but right now that spill out is gone. Or let's say no one is near that column of dice. You can push back that same number back into the bag from any sector, even if you're not in it. But it's going to cost you 2 dice additional to drop at the end of that turn, as a little bit of a, weighing the risk and reward. Cards like this ended up really kind of tweaking the math, as did some of the actual player abilities. So for example, you don't know exactly which 4 characters you're going to be playing as, but here, the Hazmat Specialist, and this is all prototype art, this is not final. Hazmat Specialist can clean up an oil for 2 instead of 3 action points, and you only get 4 during your turn. So cleaning up oil is a big cost, but it's something you have to keep on top of, or you will absolutely lose the game. There's no question. But all of these kind of things really kind of messed with the math, and so a lot of the time was really trying to balance how much can we really tweak things and balance it so it feels right, on top of it being proper math. One of the things that we ended up doing to add difficulty, I mean, especially if you're playing with family or it's your first time playing, I mean, it's pretty brutal. It's a hard game, and sometimes people don't want to have that big a challenge when they're just learning. So there's an intro setting, there's a challenge setting, and then of course the standard game, and that's all based on how quickly the dice ramp up. That's kind of something new that got added along the way. Normally, 3 dice drop down at the end of your turn. But as more and more spillouts occur on the board, and you track that throughout the game, you add more dice. So the situation escalates throughout the game, making it even harder and a lot more tense as the game progresses. And then we added another piece. It was suggested by Abby Wing. Said, what if there are weather conditions? So we added 4 blue dice to this game, and when those drop, they're going to change the conditions on the board. So for example, player abilities may not be able to get used for a whole round, or you might end up it's fair seas and everyone gets an extra action point to spend during their turn. That's only on a 6. Everything else is terrible. Rolling a 5 drops 3 more dice immediately as it just gushes more. So mostly the weather is terrible, but every once in a while you get a little lucky. And one of the things we've been really working on has been a win condition. The win condition is interesting because up until recently, this was a game that you won by not losing. And again, you could lose by having 3 of a different type of creature get soaked with oil, 1 of each type, or 6 spillouts. If you could empty the dice, 60 dice in the bag, if you could empty those dice without any of those things happening permanently by the end of your turn, then you would win the game. But it was really important emotionally for people. They wanted something to strive for. Can we win before we just survive the situation? So we've been working together on trying to figure out what those win conditions might be. So we've got now a series of these 3 cards with 3 winning conditions. So for example, removing 4 oil dice in a single round. So the team has to work together in 1 round to remove a lot of oil. Or another one is remove a total of 9 oil dice from the game, or save 4 full sets of marine life. Now, I've been saying or, but I actually mean to say and. All 3 of these have to actually occur in order for you to win the game. And at that time, you can actually stop dropping dice. So long as a losing condition doesn't exist on the board, you can win the game by completing one of these cards. that's actually been really interesting. First of all, balancing all of these so that they all are about the same difficulty. And I think by like one action point off, we've got them pretty tightly balanced. And it's been a very satisfying um, design process, and that's definitely something that Andy and I are going to be talking about again today. Because at one point it was going to be like a more variable point system. Could you end up like taking a deck of goals of three different difficulty levels? But we thought that making sure that everything was balanced from card to card was probably going to be the best way forward. But again, this is something we're still kind of working on. So far, it's working great, but we will continue to look at it. And But I think that's one of the things that I absolutely love about the design process is the iterative approach, the constant discovery of new things, and quite honestly, the discovery of new strategies that some people will employ that you didn't see coming. That's true with all of our games. The more people we play test with, they will highlight different strategies we had never conceived of that can either break the game or potentially lead to a new idea for how to let people go and take that kind of venture that they wanted to take. Um, so I see we've got Colin and Dickie out there saying hello. Yeah, Dickie, I thought the weather dice were brilliant when Abby brought that up as well. So we worked on that menu of things. Everything from like marine animals might cost another point to save. Something where your movement might get reduced by one for a full round, which can be really brutal because being able to get across the board is one way that you can assure that catastrophe doesn't happen. And when that's hampered, things can go awry very quickly. And Colin mentions that he really liked the goals, and I think you're right. It does make for a more interesting end game. Having a goal in mind that's a positive rather than just a purely negative is something that emotionally feels right, feels better when you achieve it, and I think is going to make the game even stronger for it. This is something I think Andy had in mind originally when he designed the game, but it's not something that was part of the prototype that he presented. So we've been talking about, how to best implement that, and so far this is our best solution. But we'll see what the next couple months hold. Um, let's see. I think that's probably all I really wanted to show you this week. I want to keep these things pretty short so that people don't get too bogged down. But I will go ahead and drop 3 more dice just because it's fun to watch them drop. But if you've got questions while I'm doing this, pop them up here and I'll go ahead and answer them. That's beautiful. And I just love how in this case, they really spilled nice and evenly, one to each quadrant. Let's see what our weather. Oh, we got lucky on the weather die. A 6 means we each get an extra action point to spend this turn. That's awesome. Anyway, all right. I don't see any more questions at the moment. So, got a couple things here. Katie. Katie's part of my local play group. Katie says, good ideas on additional win conditions. And yeah, so Katie's had a chance to play this with me live before COVID happened. And so, yeah, I'm really glad it's still in the works. I know Andy has been like dying because, it's taken a lot longer than I thought it might to go ahead and develop. But especially with a co-op game, man, you want to make sure that everything is super tight, because if it's a little bit too easy, a little bit too hard, if it just doesn't have like the feeling that you want from it, it can really kill the game. So yeah, I think it was really worth the time that we took, and I think it's really, really shaping into something special. It was already pretty damn cool when I first saw it, and I think it's only gotten better since then. Chris is talking about the printed tower looking great. Thank you. One of the things that we're going to do, by the way, is we're going to add a graphic band out here. So at the top, that will make it look more like this original thing. So we'll actually have a picture of the oil rig at the top, really just to kind of give it the sense that you want. Also, this won't be quite, they won't have this arch. That's really kind of the limitations of the 3D printer. It's going to look like more like a funnel on stilts, or more actually, it's going to look like that thin band of an oil rig um, that then kind of hovers over the water. So, and yes, demoralization is really, really critical in this game. I think particularly because people are looking at these animals, and you get swept up in this game. They stop being tokens. They stop being pieces of cardboard. People see these as actual, marine animals that they want to save. And if they can't, if they end up losing because the oil overruns everything, it can be upsetting for some people because they get very invested in wanting to do this. So yeah, I think being able to have those kind of win conditions, these goals that you can achieve, makes it it gives you the dread of wanting to see what's going to happen, but it doesn't well, it might still be just as demoralizing, but at least now I think you've got it, and a more interesting way to win the game, and I think that's really cool. Oh, question from Cable: is there a way to scrub oil from the wildlife with Dawn dish soap as a way to save a dice roll? So that's actually what the extra AP is. Normally, when you save an animal, you just sail your ship um, in front of the animal, and then say spend one action point to put it onto the board as saved. When it is contaminated, and that's what the dark splat on it, because oil was already on it, first you have to spend at least one action point to remove the oil from the board. Usually push this back into the bag. Then 2 action points to save that animal, which is the extra effort and energy of getting that animal to a facility where they can be cleaned. And yes, Dawn dish liquid is one of the things that professionals do use in the field to take that oil off of the sea life. And for that reason, I'm actually going to be approaching them and to see if we can't do some kind of interesting partnership together as well. So, good question. All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap us for today. Thanks so much for tuning in. I am going to try to make these more regular. So go ahead and subscribe if you're on YouTube. Go ahead and give us a like, or even subscribe on our Facebook page, and you'll always get notified. Other than that, next week, let me give you a little hint. We're going to have Andy Kim, the designer of this game, and we're going to actually do a bit of an interview with Andy to talk about the early design, how it's progressed, and where it's going. And we hope you will join us next week, Tuesday at 4 for that. All right. Well, till then, have a great week.